Definitely not easy, but the Minnesota Wild are able to outlast the Dallas Stars 6-5 in a shootout. We discuss everything that led up to the exciting finish on today's Locked On Wild postcast.
You are Locked On Wild postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, your team every day.
Back-to-back shootouts for the Minnesota Wild as they prevail 6-5 in a shootout tonight over the Dallas Stars after beating the Anaheim Ducks in a shootout yesterday. Our Locked On Wild postcast dives into all of the details. Thank you for tuning in, and it was a fascinating game today for the Minnesota Wild because it started off, I think, a lot better than we would have expected. The Wild did show some signs of tired legs early on in the game, but they were able to get a power play goal from Kirill Kaprizov to take a 1-0 lead after Dallas tied it. The Wild got a shorthanded goal courtesy of Dewar to make it 2-1, and at that point, the game flipped, and the Minnesota Wild get three more goals in quick succession. They get a goal from Jake Middleton and a goal from Jordan Greenway to make it 4-1. We head to the third period. Scott Wedgwood comes in relief of Jake Ottinger, and the Wild get a goal that was deflected off of Joel Eriksson to make it 5-1 at that point. And you're thinking, okay, this is going way better than we expected. And Dallas woke up, and they get 4 goals down the stretch to tie it up at 5-5. We have a scoreless overtime as both teams with some good opportunities. And then in the shootout, the Wild score all 3 times. Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Zuccarello, and Freddy Gaudreau to finish it. And the Wild come away with a win that we definitely had to sweat out at the end. But I think we need to acknowledge a few things to start about today's game. It was pretty obvious that the Wild were gassed after last night's game, and the Dallas Stars hadn't played since Thursday. They had fresh legs down the stretch, and they were able to get those 4 goals in the final 12 minutes of the third period, largely in part because they were able to sustain presence in the offensive zone, and because the Wild were just kind of trying to kill off the final 12 minutes. It's time and time again, if you play not to lose, you're going to get burned. And the Wild nearly did in this one today. That is a fantastically good Dallas Stars team that they were able to come away with a win against. But it's a situation where the next time these two teams play, you got to do what you did to start the game, but then you can't get lulled into that trance of, hey, we've got a 4-goal lead. There's no way we can blow it, right? Because this Dallas team is capable of scoring from anywhere. They've got talented players in the top 6 of that lineup that are dangerous. And, 4 goals in 12 minutes is very impressive. So the Wild are fortunate to get out of town with a win in this one. And despite kind of the final 12, there were still some really good things that the Wild did in this game today. They had some greasy goals against Jake Ottinger, and we talked about this leading into the game on our live pregame show earlier today, is that it's been a rough go for the Otter over the last month. And he had a really good performance against the Ducks, got the shutout there, but he had been giving up plenty of goals over the month of November. And so it's a situation where the Wild needed to challenge, and despite getting thoroughly outshot early, they were able to get those greasy goals. It was a great move on the shorthanded goal by Dewar to kind of slide across in front of the net and to just, basically just wait until Ottinger had committed to a move and then just flip one up over the top. Then you had the Middleton goal that was deflected up to the just under the bar to make it 3-1 at that point, and then a loose puck in front, and Greenway's able to bat it into the net for the goal there. So the Wild taking advantage of opportunities in front of the net to grab those goals and coming up with some clutch plays down the stretch. And Kirill Kaprizov continues his point streak. He has scored in 6 straight games. Just, if not for what Jason Robertson is doing, we would, I think, on a national level, be talking way more about what Kirill Kaprizov has done so far this season, because he continues to just torch teams. But we are also seeing the complementary scoring, which was a problem earlier in the season. And you look at it in this one today, and you get the goals from some of the guys that hadn't been scoring at the beginning of the season that now are. You get 2 goals from the Grief line, who I know collectively they were a -1 on the game, but I still think they played really well, and their role was an important one in this game. They were able to come away with a couple of goals, and also were able to slow down the Robertson line when they matched up with them early in the game. At the end of the game, it ended up being that the Robertson line and the Kaprizov line were basically out there the entire time as it was. And so you see the -3 for those guys, and that's not great, but it's just kind of product of circumstances out there for Kaprizov and Zuccarello, and for Steele as well. So all in all, exciting game for sure. It was much like the Vikings game today. More of a sweat than it probably should have been, but ultimately Marc-Andre Fleury made the save that he needed to, and the Wild end up coming out with the win in the shootout. I don't know what goalies are supposed to do when Kirill Kaprizov has the puck in the shootout. I don't know what you do to stop that. And Zuccarello had a nice move, and then Freddy Gaudreau with that just filthy hesitation, and then just rips the backhander past Wedgwood. It was a fun win. It was dicey, but it was a fun win. And so that's kind of where we're going to go with that. Now, the Wild are off for a couple of days, which is great because they play Calgary on Wednesday. And so to finish today's Locked On Wild postcast, we will discuss what the team needs to do going forward as the road trip continues. That is coming up after this. At Locked On Wild, we believe home should be where you and your family feel the safest, especially over the holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, SimpliSafe. And right now, SimpliSafe is offering Locked On Wild listeners 40% off a new security system. But don't put this off, or you will miss out on this offer. Whether you are a longtime homeowner who's just trying to upgrade your home security, or a first-time home buyer trying to set the stage for a lifetime of ease, SimpliSafe can give you just that. SimpliSafe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report for a 3rd year in a row. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify that a threat is real, so you can get higher priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl today. That's simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, they've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head over to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Recapping a 6-5 shootout win on our Locked On Wild postcast and looking ahead a little bit for the Wilds. But before we do that, just want to take a look now at where the Wilds sit after the win today. 13-9-2 now on the season. And if you look for the Wilds, they have won 4 games in a row. And yes, the last 2 have been via the shootout. But this team is also now 6-1 in their last 7 games. And so really starting to get some things figured out. And I think that is because of the grief line being reunited and being put together to allow for some of the other line continuities that we've been waiting for to happen. So the grief line play being put together, that pairing is not ever going to be separated. So that line is set. You've got the Kaprizov line and Sam Steele getting set as the center on that line. So that line combination is set and is good to go. You've got the fourth line, and again, I thought the fourth line did some really nice things today with Mason Shaw, Connor Dewar, and Ryan Reeves. And it's an interesting dynamic with those guys because Dewar and Shaw are both very physical. And then you've got Reeves on that line too. And so he brings, kind of that additional physicality element. And more importantly, we're seeing Matt Boldy and Freddy Gaudreau get back to some of what we saw last year. Nick Patan has been a nice piece for this lineup, but ultimately when Brandon Duhaime returns, that spot will go to him. And so you've got these line combinations that are starting to be able to gel after just being absolutely blenderized over the first 20 games of the season. And so I think that's why we're starting to see this team really put some good hockey together over the last 2 weeks, is that they're not having to juggle the lines nearly as much as they did before. And so they're able to roll with those 4 combinations and just hit teams with that as much as they possibly can. So the fact that right before this big road trip is that this stuff all has started to kind of get ironed out is big, especially because you look at the opponents that the Wild will be playing. Calgary has been playing some very uneven hockey so far this season, to the point where even, Jacob Markstrom has been way off his game recently. So you've got a very winnable game there. You got a very winnable game in Edmonton after what the Wild did to Edmonton a few nights ago. And then you have a game against Vancouver, and Vancouver just lost Thatcher Demko for 6 weeks. And so you're going to have an uneasy goalie situation there as well. So the fact that the Wild now have some line combinations set and rolling, they're going to be able to roll 4 deep against these teams and should be able to be competitive in all of those games on the road. So things starting to look more like what we expected to see from this Wild team going into the season. And after picking up a win here today against Dallas, continuing to climb the ladder and put themselves back in the conversation in the Central Division. And in fact, leaping the Colorado Avalanche with now 28 points, good enough for 3rd in the division. So the Wilds getting back to where we wanted them to be after a slow start to the season. And that is good news for the Wild as we get going. So a 6-5 shootout win for the Minnesota Wild. Make sure to tune in to Locked On Wild tomorrow as we'll recap everything with Alex Micheletti, and we'll lay out what is to come over the week for the Minnesota Wild. Make sure you follow along on YouTube, because we've got some new content coming for you starting tomorrow, and on your favorite podcast platforms as well. There is no better spot to stay up to date on the Minnesota Wild than Locked On Wild, and we're doing so with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Sports Podcast Network.